nothing qualified me. And I think that's something a lot of, future entrepreneurs or prospective entrepreneurs think that they need, right? What qualifies me to take on this problem or, start this? Absolutely. I mean, I was a trainee accountant that took on an HR problem. Like, what qualified me at all? And so I think what qualified me was, one, identifying a problem, and two, willing to put in the work into finding a solution.
Hi, I'm Peter Buch. As a serial founder, I burned out while scaling my previous company to 10 million users. After selling the company, I took a year off and realized that doing nothing wouldn't help. Running is the only thing that's harder than running your own business, is what a friend told me at the time. So I looked into trail running and fell in love with the sport. Then I realized all the similarities between endurance sports and running your own business. And that's when I knew I had to do something more. That's how Trail and Scale was born. So welcome everybody to the Trail and Scale podcast, where we share conversations with some of the world's most interesting endurance athletes and founders. We'll talk about nutrition, goal setting, wellness, longevity, race planning, and so much more. This podcast is your aid station on your journey to success. My guest today is Christiaan Berg, the co-CEO and co-founder of Jobjack. Their mission is to employ the world. What I really loved about this conversation was how openly he shares his journey of fundraising and building a high-performance team to make his dream come true. Enjoy the show. Welcome, Christiaan Berg, to the podcast.
Peter, thanks so much for having me.
What brings you here?
Well, first of all, an invite. And second, I mean, yeah, it's been really cool to share our journey so far, for what motivation or inspiration it might provide people that are on the same journey, entrepreneurially, or I don't know, even mentally sometimes. Hopefully to create some relatability and inspiration.
At Jobjack, your goal is to employ the world.
It is. It's a big one, but we believe with the right team and the right players, we can definitely contribute to get there.
What got you started?
What got me started? So, you want the long answer or the short answer?
Definitely the long one.
Okay, cool. So maybe to backtrack a bit. So I studied accounting, and accounting was always a means to an end, always a base setup for possibly taking on my own venture, but more creating a solution for a problem out there. And accounting seemed to be a really good just structure to jump from. And so one of the problems that I was faced with after studies and finding article work was I got a job really easily, probably mainly because auditing clerks are similar to slave labor. You work in exorbitant amount of hours and get paid nothing, but also just due to obviously the blessings that I was raised with, I was privileged enough to go study something like that, and there's obviously a lot of demand for CAs. And so in that, I realized that a lot of my friends that were studying, as well as the friends that didn't go study, really struggled to find work. And so this was top of mind moving into my articles. And I had a few side hustles that obviously kept me busy and kept me stimulated. But it wasn't until a point where my mother-in-law asked me to arrange, a few of my friends that were still studying for a promotional job in Franschhoek. And so I arranged a few friends, and afterwards the payment came through me, and we just got some feedback as to how it was. It was really easy for them, really easy for me, really rewarding for the person that my mother-in-law was helping. So afterwards, some of their friends and their friends' friends started asking me if I have more of these opportunities. And I remembered, oh yeah, shucks, unless you belong to some elite WhatsApp group or Facebook group, you didn't know of these opportunities that didn't require, qualifications. And so I did a few more dry runs, saw, is there a need? How easy is it? And realized like, oh shucks, this is something that's not been taken on globally. So obviously, went to go do some research to see, is there a dominating player that's really kind of connecting job seekers that are not, qualified from a tertiary perspective and the employers of such opportunities. And so there really wasn't a dominating player. And so I believe in surrounding myself with people that are better than me. And so I asked my now co-founder to really dive into things with me. He's much more system orientated and just built different. He's super smart. And so we took this on. back in 2018, soft launch. I wouldn't even call it a launch. We just went to market with an MVP that we are now embarrassed of. They always say if you not embarrassed of your MVP, you launched too late, right? So that's kind of where the dream was born, and in that, kind of it really morphed into seeing what social impact it can make, right? So back then we were focusing more on students and getting them connected to just, quick opportunities, gig jobs, as it's called. And we got a lot of need and ask for more permanent type opportunities. And kind of was in the thinking that it had probably been figured out by these major corporations. And not until we got a meeting with one of the largest retailers in Africa, which exposed to us, no, the norm is a box of paper CVs, and the norm on the job seeker side, and a lot of research backs this, is it costs these job seekers around 950 Rand a month, so about $50 a month, to look for work, right? Which is money that they don't have to begin with. And so you've got this kind of constant unemployment loop, because they actually can't afford to look for work, right? Our own surveys estimate that about 6 out of 10 job seekers have to, on a weekly basis, decide between feeding their family and looking for work. And then you have companies that are not hiring people, that are sitting with hundreds, sometimes even thousands of unfilled vacancies, because it's just too much of a schlep in finding the right person. And so hence this insight into, wow, we can actually contribute to the world being employed if we take on this market, right? Because this is where generally the biggest unemployment rate sits. So probably focusing a bit more in the future on developing countries, but the issue lies in first world nations as well. So yes, that's the in-depth answer. Apologies for the rabbit hole.
So Christiaan, what I love about this story is that essentially you were the MVP, the minimal viable product. So what qualified you to be the product in the first place?
Nothing qualified me, and I think that's something a lot of future entrepreneurs or prospective entrepreneurs think that they need, right? What qualifies me to take on this problem or, start this? Absolutely. I mean, I was a trainee accountant that took on an HR problem. Like, what qualified me at all? And so I think what qualified me was, one, identifying a problem, and two, willing to put in the work into finding a solution. And so it started with literally me being the app, right? Like it running through me through WhatsApp. And yes, I knew that we probably have to build a whole technological solution for it, and that definitely needed some smarter people than me to build. But up until that point, there's a manual way in finding a solution for most problems. And so I think what qualifies you is obviously the right intention and just the willingness to put your head down and do something about it.
But why the entry-level jobs? Like if you think about HR, the big money in recruiting is when you get 6 figures for finding a top manager for some company. So what got you into starting on the other end of the spectrum?
I think exactly that, right? Because it's a place where not a lot of people see opportunity, but ultimately it's the place which is going to enable society the most. We got this quote in Jobjack by Zig Ziglar, which says, you don't build a business, you build the people, and the people build the business, right? And so many companies don't think about that when they see their entry-level or blue-collar workers. They only look at that top tier. And the problem is also the people that are looking for a solution or kind of looking to make a good income see the quicker money, whereas, and we've realized that maybe it's something that has come just naturally from having an accounting background, but the commercial model we have is much bigger than chasing a few 6-figure placements, CEO here or CFO there. What we've built is something that can scale globally, right? So if you and don't get me wrong, we've been or people have tried to lure us into the more top tier because the placement fee for something like that is amazing. So early in the way we went to take it on is that we knew it was something that was, one, going to take a while for it to get traction. Two, it's a commercial model that only works at scale. And three, if we really wanted to get there, we needed to focus and ignore all the shiny spoons that were, thrust our way. So I think in kind of the short for the long is we dove into this, one, because it's a massive problem that really stuck to my heart. I knew I was blessed with a few platforms that I had to share, kind of the blessings that come your way aren't yours to keep, they're yours to share. And so I know that sounds a little corny, but it really kind of has been so rewarding in being able to give. And I mean, this has been proven to be able to scale much more than it would have if I just chased, something that was going to be a bit more me focused. And so one, obviously a problem, two, a massive opportunity, and three, an untapped market. So it's really something that was so kind of cool to have to figure out. Yes, there's some struggles in figuring out something that's never been done. But it's exciting, and it's exciting the more we go into it as well.
Still want to push you a little bit on the approach of starting on the lower end of the spectrum. If you think about like the Tesla approach, where Elon Musk was saying, let's have electric cars for everyone because the world actually needs electric cars at just a different approach to transport, right? Mm-hmm. He said, let's give some people expensive sports cars because then we will have the funds to build, in your case, an HR platform for everyone if we have those few people that can actually fund our way there. You still said that your approach is very lucrative. At what point did you know that you could make money, and do you make money?
Asking the real questions.
Yeah.
So we do. We just completed a nice-ish round in South African terms, which obviously validated the fact that we have a viable and scalable commercial model, and we're already making money in that, and good money, right? So yes, to your point, obviously, and our thinking has been and right. So even if you look at something like monetizing our database, we have just over almost 2.5 million registered job seekers, growing by about 2,000 to 3,000 a day. Last week, I think we averaged 6,500 new job seekers a day. So we could easily commercialize them by, rubbing off some insurance products on them. How many banks have approached us in doing this, and sure that they could fund us in getting somewhere. But ultimately, then you kind of diluting and distorting what you're there to do. You're breaking trust which should be gaining you a network effect, which should be gaining you kind of the organic growth that we've seen, right? The 6,500 a day is with zero marketing spend, right? And as soon as you're going to start throwing quick commercial solutions at it, you're going to start losing your people left, right, and center. Not because it's unhealthy for them. You can work in some really kind of cool products for them, but because they don't know who you are. And so they're going to start losing interest and start, finding what you're doing as core elsewhere. And maybe just kind of, again, to loop back to that thinking as well. And maybe, if we went to go chase a few high-end placements, sure, maybe it would have worked. But what we learned you listen to podcasts, you read books. Books are amazing, right? It's like a one-way conversation that you have for free or for a few $100. And each time it comes down to focus. Focus, because if you're going to start diverting some of your attention, whether it be time, whether it be money, whether it be emotional or intellectual kind of capacity to another problem, you're going to lose sight and focus on building what you need to build. And in our case, it was so important, has been so important, and will be in pushing that flywheel, right? Jim Collins speak in Good to Great, the book speaks about this flywheel, that it's going to be super hard to push in the beginning, but you need to keep pushing, and it's hard. But as soon as you're going to take one off and focus on something else, you're going to slow that down a lot. And the more you get to push that initial wheel, the quicker it becomes turning itself, the quicker that traction becomes, and then it becomes a flywheel or a snowball that rolls and grows incrementally, kind of without you putting in more effort. So we're at that stage where we're seeing it's rolling, and we're still giving it some nudges. So we're almost at a place where we're like, okay, cool, now we can start, expanding markets, somewhere into next year. We can widen our functionality or feature kind of list in that. So that's really been the zoning in on this market, because everyone else is distracted. Let's not be.
Speaking of focus, you still started with a big chicken and egg problem, right? As a two-sided marketplace, you need job seekers and you need jobs. How did you approach that? I know that you were kind of the guy who got some people some jobs, but that doesn't really get you very far, right? Were you actually focusing on getting jobs first, or did you approach big companies saying, "Oh, I have a list of 1,000 people who are looking"?
That's a great question, and yes, a very big dilemma if you're starting a marketplace solution, right? So, how we approached it is to go find the jobs first. Because if you're drawing in job seekers with no reward for them at all. And yes, obviously we can't place each person that's coming to our platform, right? But there needs to be something for them to feel this is real. Otherwise, you drawing them in with nothing to give, you're going to lose them for the next 2 years. So our approach was really kind of to sell the system and solution. And yes, kind of fake it till you make it, right? So obviously, you know, we had, let's say, 100 or 200 people just sign up organically because you are drawing in jobs. And with that, it becomes kind of, okay, you go to your first employee and say, listen, we have 200 people. It's not a lot, but how we approach it is first get the jobs. And then within 2 or 3 days, you know, we find you enough people. So in the beginning, it was really very manual, right? We didn't get 6,500 people signing up with a zero effort. We needed to go hunt down 10 people in a specific town.
How did you do that? Like, did you go out on the streets?
Yeah. So I mean, that was between putting up posters in local communities. My co-founder and I, there was a specific community that we just couldn't find traction. So we tried over Facebook as well. You know, post on different buy and sell Facebook groups or job seeking Facebook groups or just community Facebook groups, anything kind of you can to kind of share it out, because that's where our market lived most is Facebook. You post on Gumtree. Gumtree is also something that some job seekers look at, but then physical posters up in town. So we put on our running shoes, dove into some dangerous communities and handed out flyers and put up posters, because that's what it took. And so it slowly started getting that, okay, cool, you have some of the eggs. I don't know how you want to relate it. You had some of the eggs in which you could now, you had some jobs, so one chicken, and with that one chicken, you could get quite a few eggs. And the more eggs you could get, the easier you could go to the next chicken. And the more chicken you then got, the more eggs you got, and so forth. And so it was a bit of a push and a struggle to get the initial kind of deal side. But practically, we have always, and if we go into a new market as well, we'll always first go get the jobs before we get the job seekers, because job seekers are the market that you need to provide with a solution or a tangible solution. The chickens, the employers, it's a solution that you're selling them, a system that they need to kind of buy into kind of then getting those eggs and working them into the funnel in the correct way.
I had an interesting conversation a few years ago with Alex too, who was the co-founder of Musical.ly and later CEO of TikTok for a while. And he said that building a community is like the economy in China. You need 1 in 1,000 people to be a millionaire, and you need every person knows a millionaire, so they know it's possible. So it's kind of like your influencers in the community.
100%.
And then you need some billionaires, and you need a growing number of billionaires so that those millionaires know that there is more, right, to get. Did you focus on individuals and say, hey, we get you a job because we need to have those like poster child, like early members that we have a success story to tell?
A good question, and yes, but not for the job seekers. We did it for the employers. So we knew there were a few employers that would be your billionaires, that if we get them, they would get us your millionaire or, you know, non-millionaires in other employers. The job seekers in that sense, the word spreads automatically. So what we did with whoever we placed is we shared testimonials and asked them to share testimonials as well. So no, kind of just directly to your question, it's not something we specifically went to go target specific influencer individuals. Usually the word got out organically anyway. So that hadn't been necessary and still is not necessary. Getting the right types of employers that validate your idea, not just for employers on that note, but for the job seekers as well, right? Like looking at a company like KFC or McDonald's, well-established brand in the market that you're looking at placing. A company like Pep Stores as well is one of the most well-known retailers for the market that you're looking at placing, not just at Pep, KFC and McDonald's, but at any other, you know, kind of entry-level jobs. And so if you have their backing, you have the validity in the job seeker market as well. And so those were the first clients that we went to go chase.
Let's talk about your team. How's the setup? What do you do? What does your co-founder do? How big is your team? Tell us a little bit about how Jobjack looks like today, and maybe what it's going to look like in 2 years.
Oh, okay, cool. So we refer to ourselves as the Jobjack pack. It just rhymes. It sounds cool. And I love each member of our Jobjack pack. They're really there for the passion behind what we're doing. Sometimes a bit of a double-edged sword, right? With passion comes buy-in, comes opinion, comes a real kind of ownership and wanting to know why are things done, and you know, why are we doing some specific things. So it is sometimes a little bit harder work if you know, kind of driving and drawing in talent for passion. But practically we a team of just under 50 people now. Hiring probably on a monthly. I think beginning of last year we were probably 20, and beginning of the year before that we were 6 people. So kind of doubling on a yearly basis at the moment. Potentially probably going to double within the next year or two. But yeah, practically kind of looking at it, we just moved new offices, and that's part of the growth problem, right? You need to usually commit for like a 3-year lease, and then you need to get yourself out of the lease because you're growing, and then you're moving, and everyone needs to settle again. So we just had a full remote month in between offices, and that actually like worked really well as well. But a real heart behind what we're doing. And I mentioned the quote earlier, right? You don't build the business, you build the people, and the people build the business. And we really believe in that at Jobjack itself as well. And so we have a 3-2 split, like a hybrid model, because we believe we're still pretty early stage, and we really want to cement the culture in what we're doing and the way we're doing it. And so if you're speaking to kind of what we focus on, so one of my core focus areas is the culture. And then I look at the sales and the marketing. It's kind of the growth behind that. And then my co-founder looks more at the systems and the product and the operations behind things. And so that's generally where our focus points go. We overlap obviously quite a bit, but it's worked super well because we play off each other's strengths in an immense way. And our leadership team really keeps us accountable so that we don't lose focus, because FOMO is a real thing. If you starting out wearing the hat of every department, and now you need to start streamlining and trusting that that's going to happen without you meddling in, and usually you slow it down more than you speed it up, right? So it's been really cool to be able to share with the team where we're going and where our focus needs to be, and for them then keeping us accountable in that. So practically again, quite a big portion of our team are software engineers. We're obviously building a product that's ever growing, meeting the needs of our clients and our job seekers. And then we have quite a big operations team as well, because ultimately, or in theory, you're selling software as a service, but we all know for bigger corporates, it's always software and a service, right? If they're not going to utilize the system effectively, then you're not going to retain them. And so part of the offering is really to hold their hand in it and drive them and narrate them in the direction that makes them utilize it as effectively as possible, for them to obviously retain the service, upsell them, et cetera, et cetera. So those are probably our core, or our biggest core teams at the moment. Obviously, along with product that really expands the product and does amazing work in that. And into our new season, we'll really start focusing on growth. So from a sales and marketing side, those probably be the departments that grow the most in the coming seasons.
Christiaan, when I looked you up and researched about your company, I noticed something unusual, or rather unusual for big companies. For startups, it kind of happens sometimes. You have a co-CEO.
Yeah.
What? How comes?
How does it work?
What is that story? Yeah, how does it work? What's the story behind it? What made you choose that to have two CEOs?
It's probably a number of reasons. I'm one of a twin. I'm a twin sister. Maybe that kind of plays a mental back role somewhere. But no, in essence, so we really believe. So both my co-founder and I have quite a faith-driven view of the world, and so we've seen in the biblical stories always sending them out 2 by 2, right? So that was cool. That's something relatable. But I think besides that, it's really been when I drew Hein into to run this thing with me. I saw it running side by side, to play off each other's strengths. I knew what my strengths were, I knew what his strengths were, and vice versa. And I think it's been super rewarding not taking this on alone. I think obviously initially it started as just, hey, we co-founders, we're just running it together. Obviously as the company grows, you need to start titling yourself and your role and what you're doing. And the closer we got to that point, the more we so valued having each other running this race together as equal partners in in that, I want to say, responsibility side of things. And so it's quite unconventional, we know, but it's worked so well. I think probably mainly because one, were friends beforehand, and two, we know that this is bigger than just us. So we can call each other out on a whim as to if something's not working, if I'm slacking, if he is slacking, if he is performing super great. There's really a mutual understanding that we're not taking on each other, from a distrust perspective. We're not having our pride sit in the way of what we're doing. There's no power chase between us. I hope so. It's never come across, because we know this is something that's way bigger than we are. I mean, if you have a vision like employ the world, it's not going to rely on one person, right? Even two people. And so I think there's been such a nice just venture in taking it on together. I think one of the biggest feedback or lessons that we've seen working with other, or interacting with other founders and startups globally, is the lonesomeness of a founder trying to take on this problem, right? You can surround yourself with some pretty cool investors, with some pretty cool leadership, candidates, but ultimately it's you're kind of bearing that cross. And so it's been such a rewarding experience, just kind of working off each other's strengths and really kind of playing off the fact that we are running this together. And I think it takes away, and this is just an assumption, it takes away any perception of a kind of power chase for the rest of our team as well, right? Because there's not this one person that's completely, taking ownership. It's a shared venture. So everyone sees this shared ownership of it. We're not naive to the fact that maybe one day we realize it's not working. There's a better solution for it, whether it be both of us gone and someone else come in, or, just one of us kind of moving into that space. So far, it's worked really well. It's been a good check, a good accountability as to where we're focusing and not focusing, and where we should be performing higher. We're both pretty competitive, so we're constantly chasing each other to improve. But so that's kind of the story and the learning so far behind that.
Look, I think it's fascinating, and it seems to be working really well for you guys. For me personally, I never wanted to be CEO, and always was, because I've learned that to be a CPO and run product, or to be a real CMO and run marketing and the brand, you have to be CEO and have to have the final say. So I think it's really interesting to find somebody else, like a second person that you can do this with. Again, I guess from my experience, it's hard. It definitely is. But I guess what isn't in the world of startups?
Absolutely. And I mean, we're counting our blessings, right? We've seen partnerships crumble due to just cohesiveness and other aspects, and that's something we constantly wary of as well. So we know we need to be in the right mind space personally as well, in doing this together. So we're really counting our blessings in that. But yeah, it's been a massive privilege, and hopefully it will be to continue as well.
But what happens if you strongly disagree on something?
It's seldom happened. Seldom has it happened. Just I think because we see where we're going, right? We know intrinsically where we're going. Where it's happened, even on a fraction of a basis, we have a really cool leadership team which we can bounce aspects off, even if it's just some opinion farming. We have amazing investors as well, and mentors that we can bounce aspects off. And if we get to that point, we're like, I told you, then again, the pride has never been a kind of a distractor of where we need to go. If it's something that Hein was super passionate about, that the feedback from the team or from the investors is no, we like, and obviously kind of then myself, it's not going where we're going, then pride's not there. So it's not going to be something that he's going to be angry about and kind of, go off on his own and try and do, again, because it's a team decision. Whereas if, someone was solo, maybe there would still be this temptation to continue what you're doing. And so where we've differed in opinions, that has been our go-to, to farm some more opinions, informed opinions. We surround ourselves with people that share in our vision long-term and the impact we're making, which is ultimately what we want to chase, right? If you gun after purpose, then profit will follow. And so that's generally kind of a good check for us if we ever disagree. You
mentioned mentors, investors, strong team. Do you have a coach?
I We personally don't have like a direct CEO coach at the moment. We have a few people that have approached us after this raise. The raise obviously, kind of is out there now. So not that it's even this big news in the wider scheme of things, but obviously, kind of in the startup world in South Africa, word gets out quite easily. And so it's not something we've needed per se up until this point, because the investors that have run the race with us so far and the mentors that we've surrounded ourselves with have really provided what we would see as coaching. But as we're learning, we're realizing there's much more to it, obviously, than just checking in, on a quarterly basis as to kind of how things are going operationally, and checking in kind of on a more work-race balance perspective. Something that's been amazing is the investors that we have surrounded ourselves with up until this point. I mean, hopefully going forward as well. The first thing they'd ask in a board meeting is not how's the bottom line looking, it's how's your relationship with your wife going, right? And those are the types of individuals you want with you around the board table, because they know for the long term, you need to be fine. You need to be running a marathon, not a sprint. And so that's been really cool kind of in us just, I think, fulfilling that coaching role. And again, even a coach, right, is what you make of it. You need to go chase. So we've really kind of went out of our way to go find good mentors that keep us on the right track and that help us grow in this phase. That being said, we're growing more and more. And so intricacies come into play where it might be necessary to have a look at that. That's not an invitation for everyone to spam me for CEO coaching. We are already considering a few individuals, but we'll see where that takes us.
One of my mentors told me when I raised the very first funding round for my very first startup that an investor, especially an angel investor early on that you choose, should be an individual that you would want to grab a beer with when it's not working well, when it's not going well. So, when growth is slowing down, when you're having a rough time, this should be that type of person that you would still want to hang out with. And I think this is something that I followed and that worked really well for me. But I guess working with a coach, especially growing a business, can be really, really valuable.
Yeah. No, and I mean, you're speaking to when things don't go well, right? So we obviously started a year and a half before COVID. COVID stopped any recruitment whatsoever at all. And so that was a real testimony to, being able to interact with our investors and mentors in that time as well. In them really supporting us as humans and not just looking at the bottom line. So I think that's so true. Just really finding those people that are investing in you as a person, as opposed to just a cool idea that can be run by anyone.
How do you keep yourself going? How do you function? What are like the routines and rituals that make you thrive in your role?
So I'm quite an extrovert, so I'm in the office quite a bit. People really kind of energize me. Obviously, they de-energize me when things aren't going always, so well. When I see there's, kind of a struggle, frustration. But some routines that I put in place is one. My family comes first. So I feel I've got a really healthy work-rest balance, and kind of I don't refer to it as a work-life balance, because if you're called to do what you're doing, then you're living while you're working, right? Called to work. So and nothing against kind of the phrase. I mean, it's a well-received, and I think the intent behind it is a good one. But just practically kind of, and personally, that's how I look at it. And not to give an excuse for your work to flow over into your personal, time of rest or time of family and friends. But nevertheless, so I seldom work after 6 in the evening or over weekends. That time goes to my family because, again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Yes, there are times when it's necessary to grind a bit and to pick up, for a big contract or for something that's tipped over. And so, the team will always have my full support if that's necessary. But it's something we hopefully setting an example for as well for the rest of our team. Again, because we don't, after 6 months, a year, 3 years, want a burnt out team that just hates what they're doing, even though it's such a cool, passion project. And so that's something that's quite important to me, because without that, I'm going to be de-energized at work anyway. Something that's core to why I do what I do is my faith. So obviously there's, what I refer to as quiet time or meditation, or however you want to refer to it as a person. That's a non-negotiable, starting the morning off with that. just settles you, reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing and what's important in life and whatnot, because running a startup can easily become your identity. And if things go haywire, then, I mean, if you're relying on something that's so tangible and so fragile, then you're going to end up disappointing yourself. And if you see yourself kind of your identity failing, I mean, that's an internal crisis that's waiting to happen, right? So that's just a good check for me. And then very important as well is I've got a group of friends that keep me really accountable just to how I'm running my life. We meet on a weekly basis and check in and challenge each other on how are we doing in life? How is our relationship with our family going? How's our, kind of resting going? How is our work going? Are we diligent in the work that we've, been called to do? And then I try and keep active. I've got a 2-year-old boy, so he keeps me super active. But other than that, mentioned in August, I summited Kilimanjaro. So that was super rewarding. And where I get a chance, I'll go for a nice run. Mentioned I stayed in the city for the past 5 years. So, I mean, the mountain was a kilometer away. So, kind of just losing myself a bit in nature was really rewarding. And definitely when my boy is a little bit more settled with routine and allows me some of that space, then I mean, love to grab out and get a surf or anything that's really fun. We even have a fives football kind of team at work. People play padel or anything that's fun, right? If you kind of just enjoy life whilst exercising and just doing things that you enjoy, that rests me out, that energizes me, that keeps me going in the long term.
Can you explain what this getting lost in nature feels like and the impact that running and specifically trail running has on your life?
Oh, it can be such a good metaphor, right? So, getting lost in nature, one is just losing kind of all connection with the realities of building a startup, of the commercials behind it, of kind of, managing the people behind it. So, if you get lost in nature, one, you just exposed to what is not in your control, right? So you're really kind of just getting perspective as to what is reality and what is just something that's being shaped and molded as you go. And two, and specifically speaking to trail running, the reason I love it as well, just much more than road running, is every step is something different, right? Much like building a startup, you need to constantly be aware of where you're walking, but you need to be seeing where you're going. You need to be aware of how fast you're going. You need to kind of be aware of your surroundings and actually how beautiful it is, because I've yet to find a trail and run a trail where I'm not awestruck with how beautiful it is around me. And I think a lot of times people get caught up in the routine constantness of, okay, you need to move forward, so let's just go forward, and you forget where you are and how kind of amazing it is. So I think, and again, I'm tying this into a metaphor, but that's really what it means to me, and that's really kind of the refreshment I get on a weekly basis when I get in, something I hope to do so much more of, because obviously it's super healthy for me, but just mentally it's something that puts everything into perspective for me, and stimulates my brain in a way that I can't think of the problems I have. It just refreshes me and just enables me to come back to a problem, or come back to, I want to say reality, but I mean that's much more reality than sometimes what we face on a daily kind of work or startup basis. So it's really kind of just getting lost in what is more real. So not anti-getting lost, if that makes sense. I love trail running because it anti-loses me.
And you need to be hyper-focused, even though every step can be different, right? You need to be adaptable and hyper-focused because you might just fall.
Yeah. And you need to have strong bones, because you're gonna get smacked around building a company, and I think you're gonna trip or fall a bit here or there, kind of on a trail, and you need to kind of know that your body can take something, and I think you need to pace yourself as well, right? If you really kind of enjoying and serious about trail, kind of what your body can do, because you need to get to a certain point, and how much more important, right? If you're building a company that impacts so much lives, like know where your strengths are and rest when you need to rest, but enjoy it whilst you're running to the top.
Apart from exercising and your friends, what about your nutrition? Do you have any strict diet or at least meal times that you follow? Like, how do you keep your body going?
Oh, that's I know it's probably not the greatest answer for this conversation or this podcast, but no, I think I've been blessed with a great metabolism. I know it's a blessing. We don't eat unhealthily. We eat healthy food, but no direct nutrition. I think we came to a place where we tried the vegan thing a bit, and we tried the what do you call it, like the carnivore. I think each to their own. I think there's a lot of value in that, and I think it's what do they say? That's 80% of kind of getting there. I don't know all about that, but I know it's super important, and I know if I was doing it incorrectly, we would have changed it. But my unsatisfying answer to you is no. I enjoy food. We enjoy food. There's no hesitation usually to anything except sodas. We don't like to drink a lot of soda now. That's directly from the devil. So,
especially with that big smile on your face, I think that's a very satisfying answer.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you just follow your instinct there, and it obviously works well for you.
Yeah.
You've just raised a big funding round recently, and it's really like, for everybody who doesn't know this, it's a terrible time to raise venture capital. The economy isn't that great, and VCs are very reluctant to spend a lot of money. And for anywhere in the world, this would have been an impressive success, especially in South Africa. How did you go about this, and what was it like? How long did the process take? Let's just walk us through this.
So yes, you are very right. It's a horrible time to raise funding. But is there ever a really good time? Well, yes, probably a few years ago, it was a complete bubble. But that puts you in a different pressure anyway. So in all honesty, it was a really rewarding process for us. I know a lot of times the University of kind of give an idea of, you're going to take 6 months of your time as founder or CEO, to something like this. How we approached it is, one, you asked earlier, do we make money? So yes, we already make money, so that makes it a lot easier. To start the raise when we didn't need the raise, I think that's quite important for most people to know. I know it's not always possible and not always the case, and we previously raised when we needed funding, and that puts you just on the back foot. And so we raised way before we knew we would have needed it, and I think that just puts you in a much more advantageous seat, because you can start picking and choosing, not in a self-satisfying way, or kind of not in an egotistic way, but just in what you value. And so that brings me to my second point. Something we really kind of went into this with was a clear idea of who we want as investors, because otherwise you get caught up in the noise of different types of investors. So we knew, one, that we only wanted to speak with impact-focused investors because of what we're doing in social impact. It's a long game, so there's no pressure on a early, quick exit, thus chasing valuation, and so thus you're going to build the business in a completely different way. We are, yes, chasing massive commercial growth. It's going to be amazing, but we're chasing impact, and that'll create long-run growth, right? Long-term growth. And so even kind of sending out the initial pitch deck, I think within 2 or 3 weeks, we were, from a interest perspective, like oversubscribed. And so that was already amazing. But again, we commercially viable and have some nice growth traction, and we impact focus, right? Like massively social impact in a country where unemployment is one of the biggest issues. So I think it was, obviously we in a spot where it's quite attractive. So, not naive to that at all. But with the intent on the types of conversations, or with the right types of people, even those conversations that we then had, it took a week or two of our time as co-founders. And just maybe a side note on that, we saw a lot of value in us approaching investors as co-founders. I don't think a lot of people understand the value that and the suretyship that brings to an investor, because they can see you don't have to be co-CEOs, but I just think they see there's a shared ownership and kind of a contingency or sustainability to the founding team.
You're saying that the value was doing it together?
Yeah. Value was really doing it together, because obviously, one, you play off each other's energy and strength and expertise, and two, it really just provides hey, this is something that's going to go, because it's not just reliant on one person that's going to lose interest or that's going to get, burnt out or so forth. So from our, I want to say, intangible perception, we reckon that added a lot of value, mainly probably because, previous angel investors or even seed investors, even these investors, like, really indicated to us that they had a lot of confidence in us, which is obviously very gratifying for us, but I think it speaks to us as a team, not as individuals. And so anyway, kind of getting to the point where we're having the right types of conversations with the right types of individuals and knowing what we want out of the investors. So yes, we want impact focus, but we don't want airy-fairy, fluffy impact first. We want someone that's chasing impact, but that knows, because we're chasing impact, profit should follow. And, with that came an expectation for the right types of challenging questions to come our way. So we didn't speak with your cutthroat, I'm not going to mention names, but, kind of cutthroat value chasing early exit VCs, which are out there, which probably could give you more lucrative kind of valuation, there, but the pressure that's going to come with that is just not something that we wanted, not because we can't handle pressure, we love pressure, but because then we're going to build the company in a different way, in a less long-term way than what we aim to do. And so even speaking to some impact-focused investors, we weren't being challenged enough from a commercial perspective and operational perspective. So that's also something we could easily kind of cut. So after a week or two of meeting, we knew who we wanted to engage. And then I think thirdly, and almost most importantly, that like really helped us, and I know maybe not everyone has this luxury, but we had we have a kick-ass CFO, Danya. She's amazing. Yes, we are two CAs, so we should probably be, doing our own finance, but it's not where we, it's not our strength. And so, Danya enabled us to create this amazing data room so that we could take what's in our head and, really put it into forecasts, into commercial kind of tangible documents and viewings that we could share with the investors. So I think that layout for investors really made the conversation very easy. To get to term sheet took us, I think, a month. It was really pretty quick.
From the start of the race.
Yeah, from the start of the race, which was pretty quick by any standards. I actually remember, just because we're on this trail and scale show, we got the final term sheet as we stopped at Chapman's Peak to prep for 13 Peaks. We were doing what Chapman's Peak, Noordhoek Peak, and Constantia Neck, and unfortunately, when we came down, we got like lost somewhere, and when we came down, my knee like got busted, and we were like, okay, let's rather do 13 Peaks next year. So that's waiting for us next year, because we wanted to make sure I was fine for Kilimanjaro, which was later the year. But anyway, nonetheless, that process took really quick, and then even our DD process took rather quick-ish. Just because we had all our things in place. And I think part of what really played in our favor was our previous investors required us to be audited. And so a big schlep back then, but massively favorable for us, going into a large round like this. And it didn't cost us a lot, it didn't take us a lot of time in the previous, audits. It's someone else does it. And so that just set us, I think, up for a quicker DD process from a financial perspective and so forth. And then it was just the last legal DD and the the contract signing, which took months and months and months and months and months. Unfortunately, we reckon there could have been different choices in providers, but that's something that comes with the territory. Everyone learns from that process as well. So in all, from end to end, the race took us about 8 months for money in the bank. So note to self, that is what it can take, and it could take even longer. I think if the beginning process took us, even longer, it's something that can take up to a year.
It can take 8 months if things are going well, which is quite scary.
But we were blessed in the fact that we had a solid CFO that could run with it, and it didn't have to take up any more.
And you didn't have that financial, like that burn.
Exactly.
Rate that was like money that running out.
Yeah, it was there, like in the long term, right? If you're chasing growth and you're spending, but obviously at that point we could switch it on and off as we see that it lag on. So it's just frustrating because it keeps you from pulling some of the triggers that can be pulled for further growth.
Let's just clarify quick. DD is due diligence.
DD is due diligence. So that's usually an investor getting an external party that specializes either in technology or in finance or in legal, or even in our case, psychometric assessments, that really comes to like pull everything apart and see, are you really what you say you are? Is there really tangible value in what you've created? And sometimes it's a rewarding process because it's validated, and sometimes it can go other way. In our case, luckily, it was a rewarding one.
It was the best explanation I heard so far.
Great. Yes, it was. It was for us. It was rewarding. So I would have hopefully a positive reaction to that.
Did you do any due diligence on your investors?
Yes, we actually did. That's a good question. So so we spoke to some portfolio companies in which our investors had invested. And for others, we had walked a long journey with already from an impact project perspective and so forth. So we chatted a lot with their teams and their head of teams as well. And usually it was in the same meeting, right? There's some interrogation your side, there's some interrogation that side. And so I think the vast majority of our kind of just flagging came in the initial meeting. In the initial meeting, I think a lot of founders are almost scared to kind of prod the investor, but the investors want that as well. And so I think it was really kind of evident to our investors as well, our confidence in knowing who needs to invest in us. And I think that kind of gave them light into, oh, yes, these oaks know what they want. And then obviously kind of just asking them directly, listen, cool, you guys are going to do your DD. We hope you understand we need to do ours as well. Chatting with the extended team, chatting with portfolio companies. Portfolio companies are usually the best types of, aspects to run through. But for the rest, you need to kind of trust what they're out there for, because there have been some mistakes. We've not yet made them, and hopefully will not. But it can happen to anyone. So I think the message out there is kind of to do as much as you can with as much respect as you can to those investors as well. Obviously dealing with a lot of portfolio or potential investees, but they should be open to that quite thoroughly, and they'll appreciate it as well.
What should founders ask investors in that process? Like, what would be your one key question that every investor needs to answer?
So our one key question was, do they understand the scale of impact that we're chasing? Do they really understand? Because especially in a South African context, right? There's not a mindset of complete globalization. It's no, we get it. And then they cap you at 100 million rand, revenue. And that's no, guys, do you really understand the scale at which we are chasing and how long that could potentially take? Are you willing to take the risk that this might take 20 years to do? Yeah. And that was for us in what we were kind of looking for, quite a key indicator. Again, we're not naive to the fact that they would want to return anywhere, between 5, 10, 7, 10 years. And that's what we're going to try and get them by all means, but it's not mandated on their side. Or at least it's not a kind of a first indicator of what they're looking for. So big question on our side was, do they understand that? And do they understand why we're doing what we're doing? Because, and again, a lot of times they kind of do, but they just look at the commercial and how you can exploit the job seekers more, get more revenue out of them. And that was kind of a core indicator to us. If someone really got where we're going, again, their insight might be very viable for another company, might even get them to unicorn status quicker than ours maybe might. We don't believe so, obviously, but we know where we're going, and we needed that buy-in from them to understand that they know where we're going and they're buying into that as well.
So Christiaan, Jobjack, how big can this be?
Very, very big. So again, our vision is employ the world. And so we really believe we can directly contribute to that vision. We already have multiple of our clients begging us to move up into Africa, begging us to move up into Southeast Asia. We have clients that have operations in South America, in Australasia, in Europe, in the States. So So quite big, but we need to focus, right? You need to scale what you know works, not scale what you think works. And yes, there's a fine line. Sometimes you need to take the leap of faith, but we aiming at moving it up into Africa, or at least testing Africa, hopefully by the end of next year. Then diving into that further the year thereafter, and then probably from there moving into more developing countries. That's generally where your demand for work is higher than your supply of work. But the same disconnect exists in first world countries as well. But that's a completely different monster in and of its own. But it's definitely part of our scope. So the more we dive into what we're solving for these employers, the more we're realizing the value that we can unlock for them, and obviously ultimately for ourselves as well, and for the job seeker. So I mean, if you can imagine a world where, especially in developing countries, where your matriculants, your high school graduates already are to a degree work ready. They've hopefully built up some profile, some experience in kind of some way, shape or form, and they can actually go out into the market and understand that in some cases they need to start at entry level and work their way up from there, but that there's actually hope in them finding employment and being equipped to take that on. And so if we can get that right, from an institutional perspective, and I know I'm diving deep now, then you kind of every year you're creating, a supply of people that you can push out into the market in an informed way. So to give you an example, we developed our own psychometric assessments for this market, right? The current psychometric assessments out there are Europeanized or Americanized and are aimed at your, white collar or head office, more professional type opportunities in unaffordable and just not relatable. And so we built our own assessments focusing on this market. And with that, we're able to start identifying what candidates have the constructs to fit into different types of entry-level roles. And in that, you can start identifying where they're going to grow and where they're going to actually build a career. And from there, start directing them to where they're going to thrive. And with that feedback loop, you're able to kind of have insight into who's actually performing into the role in the company and start producing more of that talent, from an institutional perspective. So you have this complete loop of becoming the best in the world at knowing who would fit for an entry-level role. So that's where we're going, and that's what we feel we're going to get right.
Is any of the things that you do in danger because of trends with artificial intelligence? Like, is AI a threat to your business? And is it a threat to some of the job seekers? How do you see that development? And are you leveraging any of the current technologies to your advantage in AI and machine learning?
So we definitely see it holistically as an advantage, as a massive benefit, not just to us, but to job seekers and to companies as a whole. It creates more opportunities, and that's what we're excited about. Opportunities we might not know of yet. So yes, it might remove some specific roles where there's, kind of manual labor being done, but with that, has created so much more opportunities because it enables companies to thrive and do things more effectively, thus grow, in a different type of way, and thus create more opportunities. So for us, obviously, we utilize it, within vast, amounts of our company, from, job specs to, some of the dev capacity, some of, those types of aspects. We're not going to get into detail. But from an entry-level job seeker, we really see this as being an enabler and not a, competitor, just because we've seen some, let's say, manufacturers utilize it, and you'd think, oh, shucks, there goes, 100 jobs in. Yes, in some cases, some warehouses might completely just remove, but for 90% of the others, they automate some part, which enables them to grow so much more in a job creating way. And so that's obviously what will be part of, the forefront of knowing and learning and hopefully advising and enabling. But we are very positive about the effect on that of AI. We'll see where it goes. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic sometimes, but yeah, if you can't be optimistic about the opportunities that are out there, then why take on any opportunities?
I think founders need to be relentless and optimistic.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can't go anywhere.
No, and you're gonna, you need to make use of what's out there around you, right? And hopefully motivate some people to join your cause and join the adventure. Life is an adventure, and so we need to enjoy it. And if one path kind of closes, then there'll be be another one right there. There's this awesome book called Who Moved My Cheese, which I'm sure you've heard of, which is so cool to just the mindset of adapting, seeing an opportunity, making use of it. And then as soon as it changes, take it on, because that's what life is. It's just a series of different opportunities. Rather than being dismayed by those doors that closed, rather be excited by those that are going to open.
I sincerely hope we motivated some of our listeners.
I hope so too.
Thanks, Christiaan, for being here. This was great.
I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for having me share my story.
Keep growing.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Trail and Scale podcast. If you like this episode, please take a moment and click that subscribe button. It really means a lot to us. Special thanks to our sponsors, Stardust Coffee, and our production partners, Sledgehammer Studio and 2250. Go check them out and support them if you want to support us. Stay tuned. We have many more interesting athletes and founders lined up that we're going to speak to over the course of the next couple of months.